Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Jim Harrison, and I'm here to do another live presentation. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about holiday spices, the spice trade, and just seasonal scents. That's what we're going to be talking about. For those of you who haven't been in any of my courses or seen me here on LinkedIn and YouTube doing a live thing or whatever, I'm Jim Harrison. And I am an eccentric. Yes, I am eccentric. Yes, no doubt. I'm an essential oil expert, 25 years plus. Sometimes I say 30 years plus, but when I feel like not making myself seem like I've been around forever, I'll say 25 plus years. That's how long I've been working with essential oils. And I have done so many different things. I owned a spa, and so worked as a clinician. I have been an educator since really I started doing this. I started teaching, taught at a medical university. So my experience is really broad. Oh, I was also a manufacturer. I had I co-founded a plant-based skincare company. So this is the information. This is the history. This is the experience that I bring as I tell you about essential oils. So first of all, let me just tell you how to connect with me. I'm right here at jimharrison.com. This is the email address you can find me at. If you have a spa, resort, wellness center, and would like me to come in and do staff trainings and also guest workshops. I do some really cool guest workshops. So staff training, guest workshops, contact me, bring me in. A lot of fun doing these things. Love essential oils. I just love essential oils, and I like to share it. And that's what I'm going to do today. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go and start talking about, let me move everything because that all gets in the way of this great presentation that we have here. And so today, what we're talking about is essential oils, the spice trade, and the holidays, which I also call Jesus and pumpkin pie. Now, a lot of us are familiar, excuse me, a lot of us are familiar with the sense that we have seasonally related to Christmas and the birth of Jesus, which has very profound connection with some of these, which we're going to talk about today. And so the relationship between the Christmas holiday, the birth of Jesus, and these fragrances that we use, I'm going to explain how they became directly linked, as well as outside of Christmas being a religious holiday. Throughout the world, it is celebrated. And here in the US, I mean, we start promoting it on Halloween, October 31st. It's kind of become a retail holiday, hasn't it? But it's awesome because it's all about joy and love and sharing and gifts and just so many great things. And so to prolong it from the end of October to, January 1st, the New Year's Eve, then, hey, I love it. So I'm going to show you how to do a few things related, starting from now, because here in the US, we have Thanksgiving coming up. That's like in a little over a week. And so the flavors and the fragrances I'm going to be talking about are also related here in the US to the Thanksgiving holiday. And that's where this pumpkin pie comes in. And why are the flavors that we start associating, Starbucks is really good at promoting that, right, with their pumpkin lattes. I don't have too many good things to say about the fragrances or the quality, I guess, of the fragrances. But hey, that's what they do, and it works because, it's a big deal. I don't know, it's a big deal. Pumpkin latte season. Hey, yeah, okay. So that's where we're going. That's where we're going today, okay? Here's what we have. I really am focused on the spice trades. I am not a historian. So the information I'm sharing with you is based on my interest, my research, and my understanding of how all of this connects and how we use it. I have a blend at the end that I'm going to talk a little bit about. And it was really the blend that inspired me to look further into the connection of all of these odors and fragrances and essential oils and spices and everything else that we have here at the end of the year. And it all is geared around this very historic thing we call the spice trade. And so the spice trade, and the dates I have for that are 2000 BC to the 1700s. And so this really is the influence on the specific spices and resins and odors that we're going to be talking about today. So cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, frankincense, myrrh, these are the most common fragrances, essential oils, spices, resins that we use to incorporate into our holiday festivities here at the end of the year. And these were traded, this is the words I'm using, across vast land and sea routes. And this is what the spice trade was. So I'm going to show you a map of where this was all coming from, but it traded from India, Arabia, Southeast Asia, and the trade was carried on through land and sea into the Mediterranean, and then also into Europe. Now, historically, these spices, especially frankincense and myrrh, were highly praised, highly valued. And so this was currency. The spices were currency, and their value was very, very high. So it was about offerings and medicines, as the way we use the essential oils today. It definitely relates to the historic use of these resins and spices. Status symbol. Yeah, whenever I carry around a bottle of frankincense, I just feel like I've got status. Actually, frankincense is beautiful. It doesn't give me status. It gives me health and wellness and beauty and everything else. The essential oils for preserving food were actually not essential oils. I don't want to say that. But they were essential for preparing food and supporting health in the winter months. So this is the basis of why, when I mentioned the cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, is actually more, but these are the core, right? All of these had medicinal value. They were known for their medicinal value. They were known for their spiritual value. They were used for food, preserving food. I mean, there was such a high value to these aromatics. Let's call them aromatics before I call them essential oils. Let me pull this up just a little bit, get a little closer. This is kind of a rough look at the spice trade. Now, the red line is actually the Silk Road that came out of China. Different but similar, definitely had an influence on the aromatics that we use today. So that top line is more from the Silk Road. At the lower part there, where you're seeing it coming from, the Southern Asian countries and India, the blue lines, that is the spice trade. So it was carried through land, but this shows the sea routes that were there. So you can see how it goes to Africa, and then to the Middle East, and then up into Europe. So we're gonna understand what this relationship is, and how from these spices, where they grow, where they came from, and how they influence these other cultures and these other areas of the world, including North America. Because later, as the Europeans came over and conquered the United States, especially North America, they carried these spices, they carried these traditions with them. And that's how it became incorporated pretty much all over the world. Highly, highly valued, highly praised. And so let's look specifically at some of these spices, especially, and the resins. So cinnamon, warming, preserving, really good for preserving foods. We know this from essential oils that cinnamon is one of the more potently antibacterial essential oils, but it also molds and viruses that you don't find too much in food, but molds and the bacteria. And this was valued as far back as, in the history that we know, 2000 BC in Egypt, or BCE in Egypt. We hear a lot about, I'll tell you about that in a minute. Cardamom. This is one I hadn't mentioned already, but cardamom also is a good digestive aid. Again, we know these things from using it in essential oils. It was also used in perfumery, which perfumery has evolved over years and years, and that's a totally different discussion. But some of these herbs and oils were also used for fragrancing and for, scenting the body, which is what perfume actually was, how originally it was developed. India, Middle East, the cardamom was considered a sacred spice. So there's a lot of medicinal and spiritual uses for these spices, including cardamom and cinnamon. I didn't really mention that for cinnamon. Ginger, another one I haven't mentioned yet, circulatory stimulant, travel sickness remedy, also antibacterial, and anti-mold. It does work that way. Clove, another one, antibacterial. Toothache relief. Yeah, it could work that way. Toothpaste relief. And clove is also used in incensing for, sacred, spiritual, again, ceremonial uses. Nutmeg is an aphrodisiac. It's also calming. It's a digestive aid. And it was considered a rare spice. And so there was a lot of competition to get these spices. One of the stories, I guess I can tell you this now about nutmeg, is the Dutch, which controlled what is now called Manhattan, New York, Manhattan. The British wanted Manhattan, and the British owned an island called Rouen. And Rouen was where a fair amount of nutmeg was harvested and produced as a spice. And so this is not, from the research I did, this isn't exactly historically accurate. It's not historically accurate. And the story is, or the myth, if you want to call it that, is that the British traded the island of Rouen for Manhattan. It was a little more involved than that from, some of the texts that I was reading, just before I was doing this presentation, just so I'd have a good idea of what I'm talking about. But that's basically it. And what that really demonstrates, rather than being an accurate story, it's demonstrating the value of these spices, that the Dutch would even have been considered to give up the island of Manhattan for the value of nutmeg in the island of Rouen. Frankincense. Just such a gorgeous, beautiful oil, incense. I was brought up going to the Catholic Church, and so frankincense has that religious, spiritual relationship for me. And, and that's the resin. That's just burning the resin. If you haven't done that, we like to diffuse it, the essential oil. But if you can get a hold of the resin and get one of those little incense burning dishes, it's such a gorgeous, so different than the essential oil because it has more structure in what doesn't get distilled into the oil. So the fragrance is more dense. And then with the smoke, the incense aspect to it, it's just such a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous piece of, my memory, going to the Catholic Church. Myrrh, another one related to Catholicism and Jesus, and, very, very good healing oil. Emotional support, and again, sacred femininity is one of the things it's related to historically. And then it was used by the Egyptians for embalming. And when you hear this, the embalming aspect, that tells you that these are powerful antiseptic, so antibacterial and all the things that would, in nature, it's part of the decay of living things. And the myrrh helped to prevent that decay. And that's how they were used in embalming. Now to get into the December celebration. So this is the history. So we're going back, what did I say, 2000 BCE? So the spice trade, there's a long, long, long history there of these spices being known and carried and then used in the different cultures. So these are mostly agricultural cultures that we're talking about when the spices go from the India and the Southeast Asian countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and all that, and are carried Africa and into the Middle East and into Europe. A lot of the cultures, in fact, most of them were agricultural. And so their focus is on seasons and paying attention to where the sun is. And this all has to do with when to plant, when to grow, when to harvest, when to hibernate. Seasonal, agricultural. It's all about nature. It's all about the rhythms of the seasons. And so part of this is incorporated into our understanding of how we use these spices and resins and the tree oils, which I haven't really mentioned yet, how we use them today, especially in these December celebrations. This started, or these celebrations were in place well before Christianity developed. So the cultures around the world were celebrating the winter solstice. And again, it's about seasons. It's about following the sun, and winter solstice is about the sun. Now, the darkest day of the year is 21st, winter solstice. Then there is the first visible length. The days are starting to get longer, and that actually falls on December 25th. So we're going to incorporate that as we continue to tell this story. Many of these celebrations included aromatic rituals. Now, I hadn't said this yet, and I meant to, and I'm going to say it now. We today are mostly working with essential oils. And you'll hear in some aromatherapy conversations that essential oils are thousands of years old. And aromatherapy, the practice of aromatherapy, is thousands of years old. It is not. Essential oils specifically are distilled. That's the definition of essential oils. The things that were mainly used were unguents and resins, like what I talked about, frankincense and just burning the resin, and poultices. This is the way that the aromatics were used. So our understanding of how we use essential oils today is related to that thousands of years of history. But there are not thousands of years of use of essential oils. Essential oils, even though distillation is thought to be as old as 5,000 years old, the first still, but did that distill essential oils? I mean, it could have even been alcohol that was being distilled, or it could have just been hydrosols. So really, when we think about essential oils in history, it's the perfumery industry. And in the 16th century, when we can say that, yeah, essential oils do have a historic basis, but it really goes back to 16th century when it started to become more popularized, but very limited. It was for rich people, royalty, who had perfume, or who had access to perfume. Now, aromatherapy, specifically aromatherapy, is just a little over 100 years old. And that didn't start until, late 1800s, but it really was Gattefossé coining the phrase aromatherapy in the early 1930s. So that's your history of essential oils, aromatherapy, and so on, which only relates to this as that we were talking about aromatic. So aromatic plants is what the conversation is here, which was the spice. It was the whole spice. It was the whole resin. And then, different ways of using those, but it wasn't distilled essential oils yet. So the celebrations, that's why I had to do this, because I say aromatic rituals. So these are powerfully aromatic plants, right? And they're used already in preparations of food, preserving food especially, and they were used as medicines, but they were also burned as resins, like I said about the frankincense, and lighting fires was actually part of this celebration as well. And the whole idea was shifting from darkness to light. That's what this story is all about. So continuing with the December celebrations, the ones that were in place, Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, which is in Rome. And this actually didn't start, I think it was 250 CE. The Common Era? Yeah. so this wasn't in place in this pre-Christian time. Well, actually, this is still pre-Christianity, which I'll explain some of the dates here. And the reason that this is important is that this date is specifically December 25th. And what I said earlier is that the first visible longer day is December 25th. And that's what this celebration is all about, the birth of the unconquered sun. So, looking at in relationship to God and how spiritual characters were created through ancient times. And so it was the sun god, the birth of the sun god. Very important date, December 25th. We already know that though, don't we? The Yule, which is still a term used related to the Christmas holiday. We have a Yule log, and we have, I don't know what else they use, Yule log. I don't know. What else? What else is related to Yule? I'm going to pull up my comments just in case somebody has something to tell me that I'm not including here. Okay. All right. So the Yule. What is the Yule? This comes from Norse, Germanic, so Northern Europe. The celebrations of the longer days, agricultural cultures here. Yule celebration was also rebirth of the sun. Rebirth, because it happens every year, right? Goes around 12 months. And there you are, rebirth. So the rebirth of the sun. And the ancestral reverence and evergreen magic were part of this. The evergreen aspect of this is important for what we're going to talk about as we continue. Dongji, I don't know if I'm saying that right, even though I've been to China so many times. My Chinese is non-existent practically. I'm trying though. So this is a Chinese celebration at the time of this winter solstice, and it's the balance of yin and yang. It's about warming foods and family gathering. So it relates to the celebrations as we know it, related to what is now the Christian holiday of Christmas. The Modronite. This is Anglo-Saxon, and it means mother night. So again, we're honoring the divine feminine and ancestry of the relation to the sun. Zagmuk, I don't know if I'm saying that right, it's Babylonian. And this is the original solstice celebration, or, the historically original solstice celebration. And this again is about renewal. It's renewal of order, light over darkness. So you see how the themes are all similar, related to winter solstice, related to the sun, the seasons, and how it works from an agricultural perspective, that the longer days mean we're moving into the time of planting and harvest and food. How cool is that? Now we can get into what we're currently celebrating, and not everybody, it's not, Christmas has become one of those celebrations that, its core is religious, but the celebration has become worldwide outside of the religious ceremony. And it definitely has become similar and related to the way the solstice was celebrated pre-Christianity. And so just this idea of celebration and how it became the Christmas holiday is, as I mentioned, I haven't gotten there yet. Let's do Saturnalia first. That's December 17th through December 23rd. And what that one was, it's a Roman holiday that celebrated Saturn. And again, it's about the Roman god of agriculture and time. And so you see how that fits. The dates aren't quite at the 25th, but the celebration, really this one, it gets to the end of those shortest days. just before the solstice. So the festive spirit of Saturnalia, I can say that, right? Saturnalia. So the celebrations directly influence Christmas customs, and this is why this is incorporated, even though the dates aren't similar. Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, that's the December 25th date. And again, it's the birthday of the unconquered sun god, or the birth of the sun god. And this was chosen by the early Christian church as a symbolic birthday of Jesus in order to integrate those who were celebrating these other related solstice holidays into the religious Christian framework. And so the idea of Christmas, even from the Christian birth of Jesus perspective, was to unite people, bring people together. And bringing people together from, working from the Christian perspective, was to make changes, to be flexible, to incorporate, December 25th, not the birth of Jesus, but taking that date, incorporating the birth of Jesus into that, because the birth of Jesus is similar to the birth of, the sun god. It was related to many of the celebrations that historically came before Jesus was on the planet. And so this is, I think, the beauty of the Christmas holiday, even if we don't look at it as specifically about the birth of Jesus. It's about uniting. It's about uniting people from different cultures. It's about bringing together a celebration where we're all connected. We're all celebrating the same thing, the same ideas, the joy, the love, the gift giving. All of these things were part of all of these other celebrations. This is what's so cool about this holiday season. So the Christmas, celebrating the birth of Jesus. This officially began in the 4th century. So it wasn't like, you're at 0 CE and there you go, birth of Jesus, Christmas Day. Yes, it took 400 years to get there. And it was all about how Christianity, teachings of Jesus, started developing, and more people were incorporating into what we're calling Christianity today. And there were still all these other, what should I call them, groups and cultures and traditions. And over time, so it wasn't immediately when if we're talking about officially beginning in the 4th century, it wasn't like all of a sudden, the whole world was celebrating Christmas. It was over time, the way this evolved and spread about the world, and incorporating these winter solstice celebrations. And so again, what I was saying about this is such a powerfully uniting season, uniting holiday. It's bringing us all together, even if we're not celebrating with the same theories, with the same spiritual practices. Let's check in for comments, see if anybody's out there. Okay. The Magi and the gifts. 3 wise men. This is the story, the birth of Jesus in the manger, and how the Magi followed the north, or the star of Bethlehem, and brought them to the birthplace of Jesus. And what they brought with them was gold. Even today, gold is still one of the most highly valued substances we have. Frankincense and myrrh. This shows you the value that was said to be had for frankincense and myrrh on equal ground, in equal value with gold. It's cool. So frankincense, we already talked a little bit about it. Ritual, purification. is some of the themes that it had and relationship to why it would be used or incorporated into such a valuable gift for the baby Jesus. Same with myrrh. It's got emotional and spiritual significance. So at the time, frankincense and myrrh were valued, highly praised, highly valued along with gold. It was practical and symbolic gifts. Mostly these were reserved for royalty and sacred rituals. Again, this shows you the high value, not only of gold, but frankincense and myrrh. Now let's look at the spices and the resins and how they became incorporated into food. Because of celebrations that we have going on or coming up for the December holidays, there's familiar fragrances. There are familiar flavors. There are specific foods that are made for the December holidays. So why and how did those become incorporated into the celebration? So we're looking at the spices that were used for the holiday meals in medieval, and this is where colonial Europe. Okay, so when we're talking about the colonial time, so not only in Europe, but also what was brought over to North America. These traditions and these flavors, continued and were passed on. This is almost repetitive, but these spices, these resins, were symbolic of wealth, warmth, and warmth we can understand from, being the shortest day of the year. It's going to be cold. This is really the heart of winter as well, even though it's the beginning of winter. It's cold. And so in order to warm the body, we have these spices that are not from these cold climates. They're from warm climates. So because of the spice trade and these carried up into, the northern parts of the hemisphere, the spices were used to create a warm feeling in the body. And they actually do produce a little bit of heat in the body where they can stimulate the blood. You're going to find a lot of the therapeutic properties of these are part of what we understand from the historic use. So it was very intuitive, as well as experiential, through an evolution throughout years and years of using these, that they became known for specific medicinal uses, known for preserving food and for warming the body. But also there's an emotional warmth that goes along with this that we absolutely feel during this December celebration and the holidays that go along with it. So these foods, these spices and the resins, mostly the spices, were used in pies. So pumpkin pies, mincemeat pies, and this is still extremely popular today. Again, the reason that marketing people have incorporated into, the Starbucks and all these other things, like the pumpkin latte and whatever else is pumpkinized and latte'd and spiced up. This is where it comes from, this original use. So our foods, let's stay healthy. Let's not go with any of the synthetic stuff. There's some really yummy pies out there. I love this flavoring. I actually love chai, which also has these same herbs and spices in them. And so, which I have every morning. Chai celebration here. I'm ready. I'm ready for the winter solstice, ready for Christmas Day. Mulled wine. So this is more Northern Europe. When you get into the Anglo-Saxon areas of the world where these spices were brought up and they mulled wine and they made cider. And then also cookies, cakes, and eggnog. These are all familiar scents, flavoring for the celebration of the Christmas holiday and the winter solstice and any other thing we're celebrating at this time of year. So how we're still using them today, which is how many times have I mentioned it, how we're using them today. I'm going to expand that a little bit by getting into the emotional aspect. There is a scent. Okay, I talk a lot about the olfactory system. I guess I can't go in any course, in any discussion, in any presentation without bringing in the science of smell. And what the science of smell is, it's about emotional memory, especially because scent is guiding us to how we deal with our environment. And when it's an emotional memory, we don't have to think about it. It immediately triggers a feeling. And the feeling that we have related to these spices and resins is a comforting and a nostalgic and a joyful and blissful. And again, that unity and community and everything that goes along the big hug of the December holidays. This is the emotional aspect of these spices, which is why, I don't know why I keep bringing up this coffee shop, but this is why they can sell pumpkin lattes. There is an emotional bond with those fragrances. And so that emotional bond triggers the desire to have those flavorings. And so this is, how marketing uses our emotional connection to scent and memory. Therapeutic benefits of these. And this is really cool. I'm going to show you a formula, and I'm going to talk about all of the different aspects to how it works therapeutically. And so the cinnamon and clove are antiviral, antibacterial, nutmeg and cardamom. Actually, a lot of these spices do have antiviral and antibacterial properties. These are just two of the more potent ones. Nutmeg and cardamom, mainly we use them for digestion and again for warming. Frankincense and myrrh, centering, immune supportive. What I like to talk about when I discuss frankincense, because frankincense, its historic use in prayer, meditation, and spiritual practice, I find relates to its ability, and I'm just doing this from its historic use, from my own experience, and from how it's still used today, is that frankincense in some way has an ability to quiet the mind, that monkey mind, that me chatter that we have going in our brain, right? And so the chatter, you need to quiet that down in order to meditate. It's good to quiet that down in order to have a spiritual experience. It's important to quiet that down so you can listen and hear the words of God speaking to you. So frankincense historically has been in this setting. And this is, when I say the word centering, this is one of the ways that I see it centering and even grounding. So frankincense, if you look at the chakras, it can go from root to the crown chakra. And with each of the 7 chakras, you can see how frankincense fits in, but it's very, very stabilizing and centering, because if you have from here to here, it's also going to balance that core, that middle part. And myrrh, it's not quite as popular for everything I just described with frankincense, but they just go together like frankincense and myrrh. That's the way it works. So these are used seasonal blends for protection, energy, and emotional balance. When I talk about seasonal blends, I'm talking about the essential oils and the way that we use them today. So the sacred scenting and the ritual use. I've been talking about that, but let's get a little more specific. Frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon are still used, and even nutmeg. I mean, I think all of them, but I think the most popular in this for sacred use is frankincense and myrrh. There's also galbanum, there's spikenard, there's a long list of resins, out of the Philippines. I thank my friend Jerby for bringing me some of the most beautiful elemi I've ever had from the Philippines. And these can all be incorporated into how we use the oils today, because even though they weren't specific to the spice trade or the early use in the holiday season, as we're moving into, these can now be incorporated for the same reasons. They do have similar functions. So for now, we'll just go frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, nutmeg. I want to include nutmeg in here. Meditation and yoga. Yoga is a spiritual practice as well as an exercise. It's incorporating body and mind together. I love frankincense and myrrh during my yoga practice. The prayer and ceremony, as I've already discussed. The seasonal rituals, which is what we're talking about. These are all seasonal rituals, like my experience of growing up going to the Catholic Church and the resins burned in the church during the celebration. Definitely a seasonal ritual, definitely a very, very powerful memory for me. And the intentional gatherings, I like that word intentional, because these December holidays have a very powerful, intentional way of bringing us together. It's really cool. In here in the U.S., Thanksgiving, we have that same idea of intentional gatherings. So this connects us to ancient practices and inner calm. This is what these fragrances are doing. Citrus in seasonal scenting. I questioned this at first because I wanted to focus on the spice trades, but citrus is a part of our December holiday. So how did that happen? So what began happening is the citrus fruits, the ones most specifically orange, bergamot, bitter orange, they arrived in Europe later during the maritime trade route. So they had to come from the warmer climates, just like all the spices, up to the cooler climates, the northern part of the hemisphere. And even though they weren't part of the early spice trade, they did become central to these winter scent traditions. And they are symbolic of the sun. I talk about this, with the citruses, especially lemon and orange. I talk about them as life force, but the life force in terms of sun energy. The sun is our life force. The sun gives this planet life. And when I think about the citruses, I see them absorbing the power of the sun. And so when we use citrus oils, we're engaging in that sun energy. And so I really see them as, how they could be incorporated into this sun-based holiday season, which all has to do with winter solstice, shortest day, first visible longer day on the 25th. And so how these were used is pomanders, which was a phrase I wasn't really familiar with. But what that is mostly oranges. And you take the orange and then you poke your clove buds into the orange peel. So you have the whole orange. And these are hung up as diffusers. They're put in drawers and just used as general aromatic diffusing or aromatic environmental fragrancing. Then the holiday punches, and you see this a lot. You see the sliced up, it's mostly oranges I find that are used in December holidays. But the slice of oranges in the punches and the mulled drinks. And then also seasonal diffuser blends, which I am going to incorporate a little bit of citrus in the one I'm going to show you. But another thing about the citruses, and this relates also to sun energy, is the sun is energizing. It's about vitality, life force. And that's very, very uplifting. And also citruses are used for cleansing because they tend to move fluids through the body. And so uplifting and cleansing is a good kind of, what do I want to call it? Force, feeling that we can incorporate into the winter solstice holidays. So florals was another thing that I was trying to figure out. How did that fit in? How did florals become part of our winter solstice celebration? So again, not part of the spice trade, but they were incorporated and deeply became used in sacred and emotional rituals. We find that with rose especially. And so there was rose, lavender, jasmine, ylang-ylang. My friend Jerby brought me the most beautiful ylang-ylang from the Philippines. I thank Jerby a lot for these things. Anyway, I have some ylang-ylang. It's great. So these essential oils and florals did become incorporated into the winter solstice celebrations. They were blended with the spices, and used in ritual work and just used in general fragrancing for that floral. I find the florals a lot heart-centered and also get into the second chakra. And so we have a way of incorporating the florals into what we already know about the spices and the resins. So I'm saying create warm. That comes more from the heart. Heart is our blood supply, but also the love, the warmth of love and connection, relationship. So the florals have a beautiful way of bringing, that kind of connection, that floral heart-based energy into what we've already had for the winter solstice, or ancient times, what they had for the winter solstice. So we have, when you're creating it in a blend, can balance the blend, give a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of pretty, that floral fragrance. Comfort and clarity are two words that I'm using here. Now, protection and prevention in the winter months. We are entering, here in the Northern Hemisphere, flu season. Excuse me. We're entering flu season. And flu season tends to disrupt your December holidays. Kids get sick, you get sick, everyone seems to want to share a virus. At least we're sharing, right? It's a good thing. But we prefer not to come down with the flu or whatever. Throughout history, it was discovered, learned, experienced that these spices prevent viral infection. They prevent bacterial infection. So there is a historic use for these spices to be used to prevent getting sick. We still can use them that way, and we can use them incorporating them into the celebratory aromatic fragrances that we're doing. So for antimicrobial support, I would definitely go with cinnamon bark, clove. You can actually use cinnamon leaf too. Cinnamon leaf has a higher amount of eugenol. The compound, when you smell clove, you're basically smelling eugenol. Powerful antibacterial. It's actually analgesic. That's why it's used in tooth pain. So anyway, antimicrobial use, cinnamon bark, clove bud, frankincense, diffusing those. Hey, happy December celebration fragrances, and it clears the air of the pathogens that might make us sick. So really good to diffuse your air during a celebration with a lot of people in the room. It's a good focus. Now, you can blend this with the citruses and also the conifers, which I haven't talked about yet. So fir, pine, orange, and then clove bud, cinnamon, frankincense. You're creating an antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial atmosphere if you're using those in the air for diffusing. And so what you're getting is respiratory support, air purification, uplifting, yes, such a beautiful feel, and also a grounded mood, right? I have a mother's story. My mother's story is really how I started looking into all of this, using essential oils in a December celebration. It was always there, but this is very, very specific. So years ago, when I was living in Boston near my family, I would have my family over on Christmas Eve. Now, I come from an Italian family. I'm actually half Italian, but I was brought up by the Italian part of my family. And let me just say that Italian mothers and aunts and they can be a little crazy, lovingly crazy, but a little bit challenging. And my mother was kind of critical. And so when she come over, it was rah, 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 about this and that and the other thing. And so I thought, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this beautiful, beautiful, festive fragrance to diffuse when everyone comes over. And so my basic purpose, and this is part of the blend that I'm going to show you, my basic purpose for this was to chill out my crazy Italian aunt and mother when they came over. And oh man, did it work. It was amazing, amazing, amazing how well this worked for just bringing that balance into the conversation. I actually like, that really fiery Italian dinner. So I wasn't trying to get rid of, anything that was, kind of natural in our family. It's just I wanted to make it a little more heartfelt, a little more loving, and a little less stressful. There was a lot of stress during the holidays for my family. And so that was actually part of it, because I grew up in a my mother had 6 children. My father left when she was sick, when I was 6. And so she was trying to raise on her own 6 children with very little money. So the holiday seasons were incredibly stressful. And I think that carried over even, once we were all, on our own and gone, and everyone was doing fine. My mother did an incredible job, but there was still that edge that she'd bring over. And this got rid of that edge. It was so incredibly cool how this fragrance worked. So what I did was I basically took everything I've been talking about and put it into a blend. So here's your blend. Now, what I did here is I made a diffuser blend. You can drop these, make the formula and drop it right into a diffuser. Now, anytime you make a formula, you want to blend the oils before you put it into a cream lotion diffuser, okay? So, in a small bottle, go ahead and mix these oils. And I also did percentage. So if you wanted to make, larger amounts of this, and I recommend gram weights, you should always have a scale if you're creating essential oil blends. And that's what the percentage is for. So if you're going to make 5 mils, it's 5 times 0.08 will tell you how many grams to do. Okay, so that's your math for today. No more math, but here we go. Myrrh, 1 drop. Now, the way I did this so that this is not my formula. This was a new way that I designed or made this, because I have several other oils in this blend. But the myrrh and frankincense, of course, go in. Myrrh has an ability to come up front. So that's why it's only 1 drop with 3 drops of frankincense, which gives that beautiful resin aroma without being overpowering, because with the other oils, it's going to blend extremely well. Cinnamon bark, you have to be careful with cinnamon bark, but I do want there to be a top note kind of with the cinnamon. I don't want it to be, present in a way that it was all cinnamon. I want it to be part of a whole formula, but to be present within that formula. Nutmeg doesn't necessarily pop out very, very strong, but it just works really well in the blend. And then ylang-ylang, which does show up in a blend. If 1 more drop of ylang-ylang, the whole blend will smell like it. But it's such a beautiful sweet floral fragrance. I love the ylang-ylang. And so that oil is in there at 1 drop, but it's going to be present. You're going to feel it. You're going to smell it. And then 3 drops of the sweet orange, which just gives that beautiful citrusy, orangey note, but it will incorporate. This blend will smell like the holiday season without smelling like any one of these oils by itself. So I described through my mother's story what this blend can do, but I just gave you some words here: warm, grounding, emotionally centering. And this can be used, any time of year. It's not specific to the holidays, but it's good for morning ritual, especially if you meditate. It'd be a nice time. This is just as a seasonal meditation. This will be very good as a morning ritual, morning meditation. As I mentioned, with my family gatherings, it worked out so well. Plus, it's going to get rid of the pathogens in the atmosphere. So you're reducing the likelihood of capturing the virus. And then it's also used for quiet reflection, which, morning ritual is when I say meditation, that's also a quiet reflection. Here's what I haven't mentioned yet is the evergreens. So the evergreens were not part of the spice trade, but as I had mentioned, the Yule celebration has also become a very profound part of the winter solstice holidays, the Christmas holiday. So the evergreen trees, branches, wreaths, these were all brought in and used as part of decoration and celebration. Again, it's the Yule celebration and pre-Christian. This is not part of the Christian holiday. This is part of the Yule winter solstice celebration. Now, the trees symbolized, it symbolized a lot, but it's symbolizing life. When I look at these trees, especially I'm here in the Northeast, and these conifers are just so tall and majestic and incredible that feeling of stability and strength is also part of what these evergreens can offer. And the evergreens are also evergreens. That means they have a vitality and a resilience to move through the winter days, those cold winter days. So there's a lot of what we know about the conifers that incorporates very well with this winter solstice, December, Christmas holiday season. There's other things that they also symbolize, and they used in rituals, offerings, hung as tokens. And then you put fruit and carvings and things like that. And what you end up with is a Christmas tree with ornaments, right? There's fires. Fire had a lot to do with these celebrations, especially in the Northern Hemisphere in the cold climates, and used to mimic the returning sun. And the trees were part of the ritual in the way that the ornaments are hung. And the ornaments had, different specific meanings to them. The lights that we put on our Christmas tree also represent the sun. They do represent the star, and the Star of Bethlehem is generally what we put on the top of the tree. And so, again, pre-Christian, the ideas and the concepts and the rituals and the understandings and the connection to nature were all brought in to celebrate the days getting longer. So now we can do a solstice blend, a holiday blend, based on the evergreens and the conifers, the trees. So Atlas cedarwood, which actually comes from Morocco, and now just as a warning, Atlas cedar is having issues these days because Morocco is being heavily influenced by climate change. There's droughts and there's other things happening where the cedar is starting to become threatened as for sustainability. And so Himalayan cedar is a similar oil, not the other ones that are called cedarwoods. Like Virginia cedarwood is not a true cedar. Western cedar, not a true cedar. So you want to be specific with the botanicals genus, the Cedrus. Cedrus atlantica is Atlas cedarwood. Cedrus, I can't remember what Himalayan is. It's got the Himalayan in the word. Anyway, so these oils are great because they have a sweet, woody fragrance rather than the more pencil or sawdusty smell of like Virginia cedarwood or especially Western cedar, which is also called arbor vitae. So 1 or 3 drops of Atlas cedarwood because it creates such a nice base, nice, beautiful blend. And then 1 drop of fennel, which I haven't mentioned, but fennel has that licoricey, anisey scent to it. Also, core, very good for the core. These seed oils are always good for the core. And so there's a balance and a structure, and also raising parasympathetic activity is well known for fennel too. The fir balsam absolute. Now I say the absolute, which is really gummy, so you can't do a drop. You'd have to weigh that out. But the fir balsam, Albius balsama, I think is the name. That's the fir you want to use. I mean, you could use Douglas fir, but the balsam fir is a little more resiny, a little more like that pitch when you pick up the branch and you smell it. But the absolute is much better in this blend because it really gives a depth to that kind of pine, spruce, fir fragrance, the balsamy aspect of it. Then Scots pine, beautiful oil. And black spruce, beautiful oil. These are all the needle trees. So it's giving you that air element, that connection to, that expansive air element feel. And then I throw lemon in as the citrus. It just has a nice way of blending with the conifers. So this has a deep, steadying, forest fresh. So this gives you a forest bathing type blend. And it's grounding with strength. And then we're using it for centering the mind, calming overstimulation, reconnecting to nature's steadiness. These blends, these oils, this is where we're at right now. This is the seasonal scents. And they specifically fit what's happening in our environment. They specifically fit with what's happening in our days. So I thank you. I hope you enjoyed this little spice trade journey and our winter solstice celebration. Really appreciate you guys joining me. And if you would like me to come to your spa or resort or wellness center, I can train your staff on the therapeutic use of essential oils. And my training is very diverse. If you tell me specifically what you want to know, that's how I adjust my courses for you, my presentations. And while I'm there, I can also do guest workshops. Like if I was coming to your spa, wellness center, resort right now, I would do a little mini workshop for your guests based on the fragrances. I mean, this would be it right here, right? And I could also do, well, anything you want to do. I love storytelling. And so storytelling with guests is really fun, especially when you incorporate the olfactory system, which in this solstice celebration, I'm really talking about the olfactory connection to these fragrances, as I mentioned, and in the marketing of these, pumpkin lattes and stuff like that. Those spices, those aromas create an emotional connection to how we feel the warmth and unity and love that happens during the winter solstice and the Christmas celebrations. So that's my contact information, my website. You can get me for a free consultation at support@jimharrison.com, or actually the link is also on my website. Always appreciate everyone tuning in, hanging out. And, let me know if there's any topics you'd like me to cover for these live streams. Just let me know. But you guys have a beautiful, beautiful holiday celebration. In the U.S., have a happy Thanksgiving, which is coming right up. Happy solstice, winter solstice, happy Christmas, all the other things. I didn't mention Kwanzaa and Hanukkah because those are a little bit outside of how we celebrate the solstice. And, they actually came for different reasons. And so they don't really fit into the spice trade and the fragrances. But, because we're such a global community, all of these celebrations are starting to just meld into each other. It's so beautiful what a global community can be. And, when we really are connected, this is where the world should be. So really, you guys, thank you so much. Happy Christmas. Happy winter solstice. All the other celebrations, whatever you're celebrating. And again, U.S. guys, happy Thanksgiving. Have a good one. Thank you so much. And I will see everybody in this next journey. Okay. Thank you.